Well, there's been no multi-million-dollar advertising blitz to sell the second biggest IPO by an Australian company this year. Indeed, you've probably not even heard of Karoon Gas's float of its South American assets, because all the action will be on Brazil's booming Bovespa exchange. While Karoon's fortunes have been built on a prospective field in the Browse Basin off Broome in Australia, the company reckons local investors haven't rated its overseas assets and now plans to sell a 30% stake in them for around $600 million US. That's a view that's been given some currency with the recent boom time activity in Brazil's Santos Basin, and the news that the big Spanish oil company, Repsol, has just inked a multi-billion-dollar deal with the Chinese, which has put a rocket under the area's valuations. I spoke to Karoon's founder, Bob Hosking, who seems to have the happy knack of being in the right place at the right time. Bob Hosking, how did you get into Brazil?
Well, we'd been looking in South America for a year or a couple of years, and we've been walking the streets through most of the countries in Argentina and Paraguay, Chile, Peru. And I was actually in the office of Repsol in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. And they'd farmed out some of their acreage in Brazil to Woodside. And at this particular point in time, this guy in Repsol had lost control of Repsol South America. The Spanish had taken back control of most of South America to Spain, with the exception of Argentina. And he wasn't really in a happy frame of mind. And I'd asked a question about Woodside. I said, is there any room left for us? Because, we were looking for some action, good action, and Woodside we class as a good operator, smart operator. Could we follow them in? Is there any room left for us? And his reply was, oh, look, if you'd been here 4 weeks ago, we most probably could have offered you some acreage. But we just got the latest 3D data and we think it's a new Gulf of Mexico. So with that news, we heard that the bid round was coming up, and we scrambled and became eligible for that bid round and were successful in bidding 5 blocks. So that's how it all happened. And shortly after, when they announced the bid round, they announced all these huge fines in the deep water. So the whole thing was just all seemed to happen at the same time.
So I'd heard that some of the other bidders, some of the big oil companies that were also bidding for the same acreage, mucked up their bids because they didn't get local partners. But in fact, you didn't get a local partner either.
No, we didn't get a local partner, but we were, as I said, we weren't bidding on deep water. We weren't eligible to bid on deep water, but we were eligible to bid on the shallower water, which was 300 to 400, 500 metres. Yeah.
But is that as prospective as the deep water?
It's usually smaller, but it's possible that some parts of it are prospective as the deep water. In the basin above, which is the Campos Basin, they have pre-salt in shallow water.
But has anything been found next to your acreage?
In pre-salt?
Yeah.
No, but in post-salt, which is above the salt, right next door, 4K away, they've got a 600 million barrel in place. Petrobras have found that.
So you've now decided to IPO your Brazilian assets.
And Peruvian assets.
And Peruvian assets. So yeah. What can you tell us about what's planned there?
Well, I'll use the 2 words that are favourite, which is shortly or imminent. Because of the security regulations, I can't actually name a date, but we've already announced that we've done the first filing and to the ASX, and it's now a procedure for the second filing, which is very shortly, and we will.
So how certain is it that it'll go ahead? Are you saying it's a sort of 100% certainty, or is it a possibility that it'll fall over?
I would say that it will be going ahead.
So there was another company, Repsol, which was going to IPO, which is sold to the Chinese.
Yeah, 40% of its
40%
of its South American assets.
Yeah, for $7 billion.
For $7 billion last Friday.
So
Friday week.
Yeah. So why don't you sell to the Chinese instead of IPOing it?
Well, I think it's better I don't comment at the moment, because it could affect our plans for the IPO. But we're out looking at listing about 30% of our assets in South America to the public. Now, if other people come in with bigger bids, they'll have to be considered at the time.
What do you think your 70% is going to be worth? Looking at everything else that's been going on there and the market, sort of the prices that the market's been putting on Brazilian acreage.
Well, it all comes back to what your risk barrels are. We've got about 570 million barrels risked, which means that they work out how much you think you've got in the ground, multiply it by 20%, which is risking it, so, bringing it down. And the investors have been paying with OGX 2 years ago. I think they paid $4 or $5 a barrel. So OGX listed a company for $20 billion, nearly the size of Woodside, on exploration acreage. Now, since that time, they've drilled a lot of the acreage, and it's been quite a good success.
So how many barrels have you got?
We've got a risked barrel acreage of about 570 million barrels, approximately mid-400s in Brazil and 300 in Peru. Right. So we hope to get something in the region of $3-4 a barrel at 100%, which gives you about $2 billion.
About $2 billion.
Yeah, at 100%.
And your current market capitalisation of the entire company is $1.8 billion.
It's about 1.6, yeah.
So with the Northwest Shelf, you've got to do, you're in partnership with Conoco there.
In the Browse Basin.
So the train that you're going to have to build there is going to cost about $10 billion, of which you've got to come up with 40%. So how much cash have you got now, and can you come up with your 40%?
Well, the first thing we've got to do there is we're on a drilling program over the next 24 months of 5 or 6 wells. And we've got the money in the bank for that at the moment. So that will then confirm quantity of the gas. And from there you go into basically your project financing after that. And before you do that, of course, you take a position on selling for 20 years. So you're going to come up with a contract. So we do what everyone else does. You basically come up with some cash and finance the rest on the basis of a sales contract for 20 to 30 years. Well, so or any of these big companies just don't have a big bank account and they write out LNG trains out of their account. It's like anyone in any of these mining projects, they sell their product forward and then basically finance it on their contract. So whether or not you're Australian or American or European, they all do the same thing. So because I'm Australian, I'm just going to finance it like the Americans or the Europeans.
But is that what you want to do? That you finance it and stay with it and become another Woodside in Australia, or do you think you're more likely to sell your interest entirely to the Chinese?
You may sell it down. I don't know. I would imagine that it's if it's exciting, we'll stay with it.
Does it look exciting now to you?
It does look exciting.
And what about in Brazil? Are you going to and South America? You going to stick with that?
Yeah. Game's only starting.
Thanks for joining us, Bob Hosking.
Okay, thanks very much, Alan.